What's Going on Seaville was made possible through donations and services provided by Lighthouse Studio, Hollywood Theater Lab,
There's a big white ghost in your brain. It's always on time, it's always the same, but after 35 seconds it's the same. It turns over, turns over, turns over.
On Thursday, May 5th, 1966, the sun was setting over a sprawling farm in Griffensburg, Virginia, when a violent explosion rocked the sleepy neighborhood. Robert Baker was one of several farmhands at Winmore Farm that evening. He was a happy boy from a poor but loving family. A year earlier, tragedy struck the tight-knit family of 13. Robert's father suffered a stroke, and to help the family, as was his way, he quit school and took a job at Winmore Farm. The work was hard, but necessary, and Robert went about his duties with the work ethic he had learned from his father. On this particular night in 1966, tragedy struck the Baker family once again. The 15-year-old was given the responsibility of burning 6 piles of sagebrush in the field. He noticed a gas can laying nearby and thought he had found the perfect solution to ensure a successful burn. He picked up the can and poured 5 gallons of gasoline on the sagebrush pile, struck a match, and threw it in. But it didn't light, or so he thought. He climbed onto the tall sagebrush pile, and what he did next would change the course of the young farmhand's life forever.
I climbed up on the brush pile and poured more gas on it, and it just exploded. Explosion, yes.
Wow. How long has it been since you've been here?
It's probably been about 36 years.
36 years.
Yes.
It's a tough place for you to visit.
Yes.
Are we getting near the spot?
Yes, we are.
Can you show me the spot?
Yes, it was a brush pile right here, and this is where the fire was. Yes.
What's that bringing up for you?
It's a hard memory. It's hard to talk about it, but it was a huge brush pile, and just being here, I can feel it.
Bringing up a lot of memories, huh?
Bringing up a lot of memories. You know, it's just something you don't forget.
No.
I can still hear the explosion. I can still feel the sticks and the pressure. It just, you know, when I got on top of the brush pile, I fell down in it, and the gas can, the 5-gallon gas can was in my lap. It was still pouring out, and I remember got my britches leg all wet, my foot, and then about the time I knew I was in trouble, it exploded, and it just blew me upward and outward.
Wow. Yes. It exploded in your lap?
Yes, it did.
So what is your immediate memory after the explosion?
I was in the fire. I couldn't get out. It was the fire was all around me. It blew me out of the brush pile, and I had sticks and stuff hitting my face and my arms, and I felt that. And but what was really happening, I was in the fire itself, and I was calling out to God to help me, to get me out of it.
And were you particularly religious at that point?
Well, I've been a Christian for 2 years, and I didn't know a whole lot about what was going on. But I also knew that in this fire, I felt somebody there with me. I felt someone right in the front of me. I wasn't
the angel in the fire.
Yes, that's why I wrote the book called Angel in the Fire.
That must explain why you didn't lose your sight. One of the things that the doctor said to you when you went in, or asked you several times, was, "Can you see?"
Yes.
They couldn't believe that you could still see.
Yes. He asked me nearly a dozen times, "Can you see?" It's impossible. How can you see? You know, you didn't get it in your mouth. And he said, "You must have your mouth closed." I said, "No, my mouth was open," because I was calling out to God for help.
Wow.
And God brought me through it.
You said it took you almost 40 minutes to get over to the Yates house.
Yes.
You stumbled over to the Yates house, and who was the first person you saw?
Frankie Yates came to the door.
Mrs. Yates,
yes,
Mrs. C.F. Yates.
C.F.'s wife, yes. And
what were you thinking when you saw her?
Were
you thinking anything?
Yes, I was in so much severe pain I could hardly stand the pain. It was like I could hardly breathe, because I was still on fire. I was smoking, I had gas fumes all over me. I was still smoking. Part of my clothes had burned off, part was still on me, and some was stuck to me. And you know, and when I got to the door, I was so afraid I was going to I knew it was bad, because I had to roll on the ground to put myself out.
So C.F. Yates was having supper.
Yes.
Mrs. Yates yelled for him to come to the front of the house.
Yes.
He saw you and
Yes.
immediately took you to the hospital.
He took me to the hospital in his truck. Yes, he did.
What was that drive like?
Well, we couldn't get there soon enough. And the faster he went, the pressure of the wind made me feel a little bit better. But I felt like there was so much extensive heat from my body because I'd lost my skin. It was just unbearable. I wasn't burning, but I felt I
imagine.
was. I mean, I'd done
Nothing
lost
could
it all.
comfort you.
Nothing could comfort me. I mean, my skin it looked like I had 4 arms. I had the skin here just melted off. It was hanging down, and they had to take scissors to clip it off.
You said in your book that you remember going through the fire. That just conjures up such a vivid image. Did it feel like slow motion? I know that it's sort of that
Yes.
human tendency to
Yes.
make everything into a film, but
Well, it really was. It really was a slow motion thing because there was no way out of it. It's just all around me, and wherever I tried to make a step, I was standing on brush. They were blew all around me and around the back of me.
Wow.
I was so afraid of falling again, and that's when I started, crying out to God to help me to get me out of the fire.
And do you think that Mr. Yates's fast action had anything to do with helping to save your life?
Yes, I do. I mean, Dr. Henson made it very clear to him he would have made it to Charlottesville.
What is your first memory after the accident? When we hear the explosion to take
Well, I
you
remember
back?
my wife answering the door. I had gone to supper. This was late in the evening, and we were burning off pasture fields. We thought back in that day and time, when you burned them off at night, that the grass would come back greener, and it was the thing to do. And Robert came to the door. My wife answered the door, and I remember him saying, "I've been burned badly." And we immediately, of course, took off for the hospital.
That's right. Well, what were your thoughts when you first saw him? Were you thinking clearly?
Well, I was horrified, if you want to know the truth.
Yes, I would like to know the
Because
truth.
a burn is a very serious thing, and I knew that he was burned badly, and I wanted to get him there as quick as we could.
What was that ride like to the hospital?
Pretty bad one, I'll tell you that. I've had bad ones like that before, working men on the farm and having accidents. I've even had them to have tractor accidents where tractors would run over part of their body or something like that. So I knew about things like that, but this I knew was very serious.
The accident happened in 1966,
Yes.
but you didn't speak about it until 1992 publicly, and you didn't write your book, The Angel in the Fire, until 2010. Why is that?
Well, it's an experience that you don't write home about. It was such a devastating experience for me. It's like when the accident happened, it's not only that I got burned, but I lost my identity. And it gets very emotional. I get very emotionally to talk about it. I've always shared little bits and pieces about it, but not the story.
Is it the trauma? Were you traumatized emotionally, mentally, obviously physically? I mean,
Yes.
the doctor said that they could see your veins and that your skin was sweating blood.
Yes, I was burned so bad. I had 3rd and 4th degree burns. I had no skin. You couldn't tell what color I actually was. It was such an explosion. It just exploded so loud, and just when it done that, it took limbs and also blew against me, and it left a lot of cuts and open places on me. And when I was rushed to the hospital, all that the doctor could say, of course he got right to the point, was all I see your veins, and you're sweating blood and losing fluid.
Wow. And so what did that do for you when you heard those words? Can you remember?
Well, I was devastated, and he told the nurses to get to the room and take the mirrors out, and that there were several types of trauma, and one was physically, but mentally as well, and it's just something you don't get over. I mean, I already saw myself going on the way to the hospital.
You did see yourself?
I saw myself in the mirror, and I was devastated, and I didn't ask God to help. I just asked God to let me die.
Now they took the mirrors out and they also turned the lights off, didn't they?
Yes.
What did that do for you?
Well, I
Did you
didn't
feel
understand.
alone?
Yes, I did. I mean, it was real devastating. I mean, you just like, you're out active and you're doing things, and all of a sudden you lost it all. I mean, it's all gone. I mean, you've lost everything. I mean, it's just, you felt like your life is just passing you by. Things are flashing by you. You remember the things, but you can't go back to it. And I used to think, I said, maybe it's a nightmare. I'm dreaming, but it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real.
Let's talk about the people in your life that helped you to get through this time, because they were a powerful force in your life.
Yes, they were.
Let's start with your family.
Well, when I got burned, and I think it might have. I know it wasn't. It might have been a few nights or whatever before they saw me. I was burnt so bad, and they were trying to get me prepared to to wrap me up a lot. And I remember my mother would come, and I begged God not to see her. I didn't want to see my mother. I didn't want to see my family.
Why is that?
Because the way I looked, I was horrible.
Were you worried about how it would make them feel?
Yes. I didn't want to frighten my mother.
So you were still trying to protect them?
Yeah. Yes.
So how old were you when Robert was burned?
I was 19 when that happened.
What's your first memory of it?
Well, of them calling us and letting us know about it, it was just a shock to all of us. It was just horrifying to know that, to go and see him at the hospital, and you didn't know whether he was going to make it or not because it was that bad looking. Yeah.
That's right. The doctor said that there wasn't anything that they could do for him.
Right.
What was the feeling in the family?
I mean, we were all shocked. I mean, we were just all shocked. Yes. Yeah. And then going in to see him, and it's just like he looked like a mummy.
What was his frame of mind?
Well, he was, of course, just, suffering, shocked at what happened, and crying, and they said they didn't know if he was going to make it or not. And the thought of him, if he did make it, being scarred, and then afterwards, and so long afterwards, but within the year and all the scars, look, actually we had talked about it, looked like a rainbow, just looked like a rainbow.
Tell me about Gertie, who you dedicated, you name a chapter after Gertie.
Yes. Yeah.
So she was obviously very important.
Yes. She was an amazing woman. She really was. She would come, and she'd never come at visiting hours. She'd always come after visiting hours.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
And she would never come during the day to see me, although I wanted her to come, but she would never come. She always came at night, and she felt that, I even heard at times that the door was shut. I could see the light under the door in the hallway. And I knew it was her coming because she carried this big sack on her side. And you could hear the noise in the sack, things moving around, and she made things for her grandchildren. And I heard the nurse tell her one night, the very first couple nights, that visiting hours were over, and she said, "It's okay, honey, I'm going to see my boy." And she'd come in there and just sit down and started talking to me, and I begged her to leave. I did not want to see her, and I didn't want to scare her either. And so she started talking to me and asked me what happened, and I tried to tell her, and she kept giving me encouragement. It's going to be all right. We're going to get this thing through, and that, and I would start learning. I'd learn to confide in her.
Why do you think she took such an interest in you?
I think that what made me about her was remarkable was that she was very dedicated to the Lord. I mean, I was a baby in Christ. I was just I hadn't been saved 2 years. But this lady, she was like a walking Bible. She knew things. She would all she'd talk about is scriptures and tell me. If I told her how bad I was, she'd have a scripture for it. If I told her I couldn't sleep, she had something for that. It's always telling me stories, and she told some of the remarkable stories. And it bothered me some. I didn't think they were right normal, But as I began to get older, I began to understand why she told some of the stories she did. It was remarkable.
You painted such a beautiful picture of her coming into the room with the lights out and whispering scriptures in your ear.
Yes.
You've got to tell me about the black and white tennis shoes.
Yes. Well, the first night she came in, it was like a couple nights later she came in, and she waited so late. Sometimes she would come in and sit in the chair next to the hospital bed, and of course we never had lights on. We could always see a little light from the outside light or under the door. And she knew scripture so well she didn't have to read the Bible. She leaned over one night, and I think that had a really effect on me. She leaned over and she started quoting scriptures to me, and she says, "Now listen to what it says." And as she leaned over, I never will forget it. It gave me hope, and
For the first time?
yes, I had nothing to hold on to. But to hear her say these scriptures, and I never knew gray hair was so beautiful. When she leaned over, I saw the light from the moon shining on her beautiful hair.
She was like an angel.
Yes.
She was your angel.
And she would quote scriptures to me, and she said, "I want you to memorize scripture." And then a few days later, she came in one night, and she said, "Now I got a flashlight. We can use her flashlight." And she had this old grocery bag, and she pulled out these old tennis shoes. I mean, they're the worst looking tennis shoes I ever saw. And,
Hadn't she stolen them from her husband or something?
Yes, and she said, "If my husband comes and he sees these tennis shoes, you tell him the Lord had need of them." I said, "Yeah." But that's her character. That's the way she was. No matter what, it had a Lord in something. But she put these old tennis shoes on me, and I couldn't walk for quite a while because of the burns, and I was in such a pain to move. And of course, the skin would be stiff, and if I tried to move, it would bleed.
Were they discouraging you from moving?
For a while, yes. They would tell me not to. But the doctor then started saying, "You got to get up and move around a little bit, and you're going to get, this is not good for you." And so when she put these tennis shoes on me, she says, "Now I want you to look at these tennis shoes. They were so big, I could put 2 feet in one shoe." And she took some kind of tape, and put them all over the tennis shoes and put scriptures on them. And she said, "Now when you walk, you look at the scriptures, you look down at what that says, and you think about that.
Focus on the scriptures.
Focus on scripture." And that's how I started walking.
Dr. Henson played a big role in your recovery as well. Now, he
Yes.
was actually a skin specialist, wasn't he?
Yes.
He told you that he didn't know if there was anything he could do for you.
Yes, he didn't expect me to live.
He didn't expect for you to live.
Yes.
You say in your book that your hands were like burnt marshmallows.
Yes.
Let's see them right now. So, there's no scars on your hands whatsoever.
None.
I mean, that's pretty miraculous.
Yes.
And you had them bandaged for
Oh, a little over a year.
over a year.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So, what would you say was Robert's frame of mind through his recovery time in the hospital when you went to visit him?
Well, like anybody that's burned badly, I would imagine, he was severely worried that he would never overcome the marks and things that he had on his body and things like that. But as time went along, you could see that he was getting better and that he was coming around to being himself. And God knows that he spent a lot of awesome moments in that hospital and coming around to get back to himself. Because, see, they weren't encouraging him at all. That was the thing that always worried me a lot. And he had to do most of what I'm saying, he did most of it on his own.
That's what I was going to ask, actually. What do you think did the job? What do you think helped him get through?
I think first his faith. He had a lot of faith in God, and he believed that God could heal him, and that he knew that he had a power much greater than us humans here below. He had good doctors too. This Dr. Henson was a great guy, and he, by the way, was a guy that loved the arts too. And if there's any play that came along, he had to be in it.
So he entertained Robert as well as healed
That's
him.
right. That's right.
Now, you've read Angel in the Fire.
Yes, I have.
What are your thoughts about the book? How do you think it
It's
affects
a great book.
the reader?
Great book. It tells it like it is, and that's always important. So often when we read books We don't know whether they're fiction or what, But in Robert's book, we knew that everything was there, was the truth.
Wonderful.
And it tells about his ordeals that he had and how he got back to where he didn't have any blemish on his skin.
That's a miracle.
That was something.
That's
that was
amazing.
a miracle, really.
Yeah. Now you must have witnessed his miraculous healing firsthand when you were changing the bandages.
Yeah, I mean, and that the skin was there, and then over so long of a time, and the rainbow colors would fade. It took a while. It did take a while. It did. But to see him today with no scars is really miraculous.
It is a miracle. Absolutely.
And it's been all these years, and I know back then, and like I say, it took a while for the healing process to take effect, and the burns to fade, and the skin to heal, all the debriefing that had to be done, to take care of the skin to prevent infection.
How did it touch your relationship with Robert?
Oh, it drew us closer. I mean, and being a big sister, protective.
If you had to sum up Robert in a sentence, what would you say?
Courageous, miraculous, young man. I mean, spirit is in him.
I want to hear about the first day that you found out that you were healing. When you went in for your checkup with Dr. Henson, tell me about that.
Well, I was really, I went in that they were going to take the bandages off. Some of the worst of places was left on for quite a while. And I remember one morning they were getting me ready, and it's when like an intern came in about 4 in the morning, and they were taking the bandages off. And he jumped back, and he said, "Oh my God." And it didn't scare me because, hey, I already knew what I looked like. It didn't make any difference. I wasn't worried. It's like it scared him. I figured I'd still look the same. And
were you expecting the worst?
Yes, I was. And I was satisfied. I just didn't think I was going to get better. And then he brought the couple doctors came in, and Dr. Henson was there, and when he looked at me, he says, "You're getting yeller, and it's like it's healing too fast." And before he said all of that, he looked at me and he took his thumb and pulled my chin up, and for me to look at him. I never, in those days, I didn't look at people. I just stared at the floor. I just want nobody to see me. I just felt, ashamed of myself. And when he pulled his thumb up, he pulled my chin up with his thumb, and he looked at me and he said, "Son, do you know God?" I said, "Yes, I know God." And he said, "Well, God's healing you." And he said, I see you healing too fast. There's a rapidly changing
How is that
you."
possible that you're healing too fast? What did he mean by that?
Well, what he was saying was, I was burnt real bad around the eyes, and it was a lot still need to be done inside to be healing and
Had you
healing.
lost all the skin around your eyes
My
here?
eyes, all of this right here was burned. This was gone, and it was just, you could see just but veins. And they said, "You're healing outside the skin, but not much on the inside." And that really scared me.
And that's what they meant by too fast.
Yes, it was. It looked like when it started healing, it looked like a spider web.
Wow.
And when Miss Prince came that night, she came to see me. I couldn't wait for her to come, and I told Miss Prince about what happened and what the doctor said, and she got back, and I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. It gave me some joy, happiness, I guess. She stood at the end of the bed with her little feet, and she said, "Son, God can do anything. He can do it now. He can do it long term." He said, "Who cares? God can do anything." And she danced for a second or two there with her little feet prancing around, and she's just a woman of faith. And she said, "Son, you're on the way to recovery."
I wish I could have met that woman.
She was a remarkable lady.
So that was sort of the beginning of your healing process, and everything obviously healed fine. You didn't heal too fast.
Yes.
Were there
That's
complications?
right. I never had any complications with it. It was just a slow process. You know, I kept thinking, am I going to stay this way or live this way for the rest of my life?
Did you start to have some hope at that stage?
A little hope, yes.
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 And at this stage as well, your faith is becoming stronger?
Yes. I think one thing helped me a lot was, it was like, you know, when your life is going good, everything's going right for you, and you're on top of the mountain, you can sing and you're happy. But with me, the bottom done fell out. I done lost everything. I was losing my dad. He was in poor health. I quit school to help out at home. I felt like I was a big failure. Everything. I mean, just all gone wrong. And one night, I was in the room, and I knew right then there was a hope. It was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and a song came out. It was within me, and God gave me a song in the night, and I'll never forget it. Then I knew God was with me. I felt that for the first time that God was there.
Not alone.
Not alone.
You survived a near-fatal explosion.
Yes.
You married the woman of your dreams,
Yes.
Ruby
I
Baker,
married an angel, yes.
who used to be Ruby Jewel.
Yes, that's correct.
How could you not love that name?
Yes, it's great.
You have 2 wonderful children,
Yes.
Angela and Richard.
Yes, I do.
What is your secret? What is your secret?
I
how did you manage to be such a kind, happy person after so much darkness?
I think a lot of it has to be is having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Because without that, I mean, he does it all. The scriptures tells us that all things work together for good for them that love the Lord. And I think that I have learned that by being around people. You know, you become like the people you flock with. And the people I've been in my life, like the Yates' family and Gertie Prince and Dr. Henson, and just remarkable people. And you become like that. I mean, you become like those types of characters, and they're just it's priceless.
Robert closes the book with an invitation to his readers. He asks them to join him as a witness to the power and love of God and Jesus Christ, to whom he gives full credit for being his angel in the fire. There is no doubt that Robert Baker's survival and uncanny healing is a miracle, and he's paying it forward by spreading the word of his salvation. Robert is truly an inspiration and a gift to the world, and I feel blessed to know him. I'm Lana Young.
From Mississippi for the saints, I'll attend the service, burn my copper for the service. But lastly, she knows that it's the same, and she knows that she knows that she knows that she knows that. But you're crazy, so let you know. Oh, the crazies don't let you know.
What's Going on Seaville was made possible through donations and services provided by Lighthouse Studio. Hollywood Theater Lab.